Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and you are now tuned into Shakil and Company on America's Islamic Radio. My name is Kevin Shakil, and today we have a wonderful interview sponsored by Instant Solutions, your local IT department, and JG Advisors, a wealth management firm right here in Mineola. Today we have Amina Rashid. Please say hello to our viewers.
Hey, assalamu alaikum.
Speak close.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's nice to
Of course.
finally meet you.
Honor is ours. Welcome.
you.
Finally, we've been trying to set this interview since we first started, right?
Yes, yeah,
How's everything going today?
good.
How's your
How are you?
day?
Pretty good, and I'm actually kind of happy because you're helping me delay the Thanksgiving prep.
Okay.
So, it's good.
No problem. So, how was your day? How was it getting here?
Pretty easy actually. It was 14 minutes. We didn't get too much traffic. So
Not bad.
good, yeah.
That's
Good
great,
place.
great. So, please describe a little bit about yourself.
So I am.
Speak to the mic.
Sorry. I am a family matrimonial attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I have two young kids, a 4.5-year-old girl and a 2.5-year-old boy.
Wow.
I practice in Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk County, and the 5 boroughs, although I try to stay out of Staten Island.
Why you try to stay out of Staten Island?
It's not really part
Who
of
goes
New
to
York.
Staten Island,
and who
right?
goes to Staten Island, so.
That's not bad. So, what got you into this kind of law, like this field?
So family law specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So as immigrants and as minorities, I think that as a Muslim woman, I was always kind of on the defensive with regard to some of the criticisms that are thrown our way, that Muslim women are oppressed, and so you're always rattling off facts.
That's a very big thing.
It is,
Yeah.
and then so you rattle off the facts. Pakistan had a female prime minister, and there still hasn't been a female president, and you just are on the defensive all the time. So at one point, I actually went through a personal experience, which I'm not going to get into,
Okay.
but just more generally speaking, it made me realize that the criticisms have truth to them. And so while obviously people are directing it towards Islam, and we understand that that's not the case, it's just the interpretation and the culture. I think at the same time, you have to realize that just because it's being directed towards Islam, it doesn't mean that it's completely invalid. And so I learned that a lot of the criticisms that are thrown our way are actually valid. And then instead of kind of digging your head in the sand and acting like it doesn't exist, you should go out there and do something. And family law is one of the areas where the women in our community are the most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so
What do you
that's
mean
kind
by that?
What I mean is there's a lot of domestic violence. There's a lot of, well, you should just forgive your husband. You should live with it. And kind of the more you suffer, the stronger you are as a woman somehow. And so women are really just encouraged to grin and bear it. And a lot of, and I don't want to get into like messy territory.
No, of course.
But you know that, Islamically, if a man isn't giving you a divorce, you have to go and get a khula, you need a mufti to do that, and sometimes there's not a lot of cooperation. So women wind up handcuffed and held prisoner in marriages that they don't want
That's
to be a part
horrible.
of.
That's horrible.
And so that's really what I think led me to want to practice in this area.
Wow. So that was a lot to take in because
I'm sorry.
That was a lot, right? But my question to you is, what made you get into law, though? Like, what was the deciding factor? Like, hey, I'm going to become an attorney.
Very same experience that I was just mentioning to you, and just like the eye-opening realization that there's something that I can do to change. I mean, I have a daughter now, and so you always want to leave a better world for your kids, and especially for girls.
Definitely. I have 2 girls, by the way.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then
I
you
get it, I
understand.
get it.
You understand. You just feel so helpless because just
That's one of my biggest fears, where my daughter grow up and then they get stuck in that kind of situation, and it's just like, what do you do, right? I mean, mine's just still young. She's 3 years old and one's 8 months old.
Yeah.
That's some kind of a fear that as a father, like, hey, what if she marries the wrong guy and she goes through this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's why you went into law.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a child at that time, but I had gone through something personally, and so that's what led me to do it.
Makes sense. What do you find the most rewarding thing since you became an attorney?
The most rewarding thing, again, so with family law, it's very personal. I become more of a friend, actually, and I get pictures from people of their children, like, a year later, or somebody will send me a text and say, oh, I enrolled my child in such and such school. Thank you so much for helping me get child support. And so I think, there's a lot of bad stuff because you're doing divorce and it's the worst time in people's lives, but there's also an element that's very fulfilling.
Yeah, that was another question I had for you. I mean, while we're leaning into it, you say you're a matrimonial attorney, right? Divorce is one of the most roughest time that couples have to go through at that moment, and like the most vulnerable and the most emotional, right? How do you deal with that?
How do I
How do you personally deal with that?
I mean, so to be honest, it's hard not to be jaded because everybody around you is miserable and all the husbands are awful and all the wives are awful. And then you just have to kind of understand that people are coming to me when they're in trouble and that's not the general population. But it definitely, it's difficult not to become jaded.
That's what I mean. The thing is, how do you take all of that and then go home and live a normal life?
You don't.
You don't.
Who said you live a normal life? I mean, literally, I will tell people how all of us, living life, we all have stress, we have problems, and sometimes it keeps you up at night. And maybe this is attorneys in general, but I find that I'm staying up at night thinking about 50 other people's problems.
Wow.
Because you become invested and you care about your clients, and so you don't live a normal life. I mean,
That's really deep.
You stress about everybody's lives.
That's really deep. While you were in school becoming an attorney, was there a moment where you just wanted to give up?
No.
You never wanted to give up.
I never want to give up on anything, so.
So you're a go-getter.
I am.
Wow.
Yes.
So for those of you who are tuning in, we are live on Shakil Co on American Islamic Radio. We are live with Amina Rashid, and she's an attorney. She's a
Family and
matrimonial attorney, and we're here discussing her life and what she does for a living. So can you describe one of the hardest cases you have ever had that hit too close to home for you?
Too close to home. I will say I've had many domestic violence cases, and there have been times when my client is explaining to the judge what happened, because you don't automatically go to trial with the matrimonial. You have 3 or 4 conference dates, and sometimes the judge is sitting at a table and client's next to you, and it's very informal and casual, and she will start relaying just the awful abuse that she's endured, and I sometimes have to just hold back tears because you can't be the attorney that's sitting at the table and crying. So I think those cases are really, really difficult because that could be me or my friends. It's difficult to watch that.
So, I mean, I've never seen a picture of you before, and I see that you're in a hijab, right? How is that different, like going to court in a hijab?
So I will say, as an attorney, first of all, like even if you take the hijab out, being a female attorney in a very male-dominated field, you have to overcome a lot of obstacles to like get respect, and when you add hijab into the mix, it's a whole other ball game. I'm not a combative person. On my own, I'm very friendly and I'm nice to everyone, but I think that's like just experiences that I've had. I realize that there's certain people, and there's a segment of the population, to be honest, that is their narrative that they've created for themselves is challenged when they see a woman like me that is their peer, and they are not happy to see me in any way equal to them. And so I think, it's difficult because you don't know what the judge, that if you're going in front of a judge for the first time, you don't know what their personal beliefs are. If they have like a MAGA hat in the back, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of racism in this country at this moment.
There is, and so you have to always worry about how somebody views you. But I think that once they see you professionally and that you're competent, they do start respecting you, and then you just have to earn your way. And it sucks that you have to earn your way.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
So we actually have a question here that came in. Does she realize that she can actually influence Muslim and non-Muslim girls by talking publicly in forums?
I do. I think that there's Muslim attorneys that don't wear hijab that ask me all the time about my experience wearing hijab, and they'll say, "Oh, make dua for me. I really want to wear hijab." And then there are attorneys that are not Muslim and they don't really know much about hijab, and I think that the way I am, they are kind of surprised, and then they'll ask questions because they're curious.
So do you think by you wearing a hijab, it basically opens up a dialogue that people want to have with you?
It does, and I think, so I will say, I think that the majority of people, they want to be open-minded. They just haven't been exposed to anything really, and so when they are exposed and they get to ask questions, I think they want to learn and they're willing to open their minds a little bit.
That's the reason we open American Islamic Radio, to break down barriers, to explain to people what the religion of Islam is.
Yeah.
So you're doing it on the forefront and we're doing it on the back end. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I see that you're on the board in Suffolk County as an advocate for low-income litigants. Can you describe what that is?
So there are certain categories of cases, even in family court. I mean, I know everybody must know this from TV. So, criminal defendants are entitled to counsel if they can't afford. So there's certain categories, even in family court, where there's constitutional rights that are at play. So, for example, orders of protection in family court, because it can subject someone to incarceration. violations of child support, custody, visitation. There are people that can't afford attorneys, and so there's a program where the county pays the legal fees. It's called the 18B panel. So there's a screening process, and once you're on the panel, the judge, you have an intake day. You're sitting in the back of the court or on the third floor, for example, and from 9 to 5 you're in court, and anybody that can't afford, they just assign you the cases.
Okay.
And then you wind up representing people that can't afford counsel.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that was available to people. So that's completely free to people who don't.
It's
who can't
completely
afford
free. It's the county's paying you, and it's kind of like it's a nice middle ground because you make like a fraction of what you make off of privately retained clients, but it helps you feel like you're doing something because there's been a lot of clients, specifically in Suffolk County for some reason, Muslim women that can't afford legal fees, and they'll come to me, and you so want to help people, but at the same time you're running a business, and you can only take on so much pro bono work, and so you have to just say, I'm sorry, like I can reduce my fee and I can do whatever I can to help you, but I can't work for free. So it's a good middle ground, and for those people that are in Suffolk County, even if I'm not on intake that day, so a lot of the judges, they know that I speak Urdu and they know that I have a cultural familiarity. So they'll text me and say, I have this case, can you take the assignment? So even if it's not my intake day, they will still assign me the Muslim clients. Yeah.
That's like breaking down barriers. On top of that, you have people know that you're the Muslim attorney.
I'm the only hijabi in the whole building.
Wow.
So
that speaks volumes, right? Wow. That was a lot.
I talk a lot. So
No, that was a lot because the thing is that, I mean, you're honestly doing such great work, and people who I honestly had no idea who you were until recently, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And the thing is, you're doing such great work. I mean, that's why I want you here, because the thing is that she's doing such great work for the community, and people who have no idea, and people who honestly aren't doing work are all out there. So
Yeah.
people like you should be highlighted for this kind of stuff.
Thank
know what I mean?
you.
It's amazing. You mentioned TV, right? Is court like TV at all?
No. But I will say that I'm in family court very often, and family court is very laid back and very relaxed. I'm in Supreme Court, New York State Supreme Court for divorces, and even that I will say it's much more casual than I think. Like TV is like super formal and intense, and this is more like the judge is sitting in the chair and leaning back and just like talking about garbage, and
Wow.
and in the middle we're kind of like throwing in like stuff about the case. So it's definitely more casual than.
That's really cool. So, if somebody's having an issue, let's say somebody has a domestic violence issue, a woman or a guy is being violated in their house, right? What can they do? What's the process for that?
The very first thing I advise people is to seek an order of protection.
Okay. What is that?
So an order of protection is basically the court ordering somebody to stay away from you. So there's two types. There's a stay away order and a refrain from.
Okay.
Stay away means you can't go near the person's home, the person's business, etc. And to the point that if you walk into a grocery store, so if, for example, I had an order of protection against you, if you were there and then I walked in, you would have to leave
Wow.
if it was a stay away. So it's very powerful. And then there's something called a refrain from, which basically just tells you to refrain from harassment or violent threats, etc. You don't have to leave the premises if another individual is there. So the very first step is always to get an order of protection,
Okay.
because the most dangerous time for DV victims is when they're trying to get away.
So, how do you get an order of protection?
In family court, you would go to the family court. They help you file a petition. They help you fill it out. You basically tell them you want to file a family offense petition.
Okay.
In family court, you need to have either an intimate relationship with the person, or they need to be related to you through blood or marriage. And so if you have one of those relationships, you can go to family court for the order of protection. If
Okay.
not, you would have to go to criminal court.
Okay. They get to court. They want to file this thing. Is it free?
It is free. Family court, all the filing. Family court is meant to be user friendly.
Okay.
And so there's no filing fees. They help you fill out the petitions. And, a lot of people, they file the petition on their own, and then they'll retain an attorney afterwards.
Okay. So, go to court, file a petition. How does the other person know that the other person filed a petition?
So what happens when you go to court? So the very first time you go to court, you file the petition. With family offense, you're going to go in front of a judge immediately.
Okay.
And they issue something called an ex parte order, which means that they have issued you an order without hearing the other side of the story.
Okay.
The reason they do that is because they're thinking about the risks, and it is, and honestly, nobody wants to be on the news the next day. So they don't want me coming to them and saying, I'm scared of so and so, and I think he's going to kill me. And the judge says, well, let me hear his side first, and then you leave and you get killed.
Anything happens.
So they will issue the order without hearing the other side, but you're going to have a very short return date, which is when you have to come back to court, and the other person has to come to court as well, and that's their opportunity to be heard. And basically, the sheriff is the one that serves the order of protection on the person that you filed against.
Let's say you're a woman at home, you're a wife, and you don't have any money, your husband's only sole income, and he owns the house, and you file this petition. Do you have to leave, or the guy has to leave?
So I will say, especially when there's parties that are married or they're living together, a lot of times people use orders of protection as an eviction, essentially.
Okay.
So they don't actually need the order of protection, but they want the spouse out of the house. So they'll use it as a backdoor eviction. And so the courts are very cognizant of that. And so they will look at things kind of suspiciously when there's a wife and a husband and someone's trying to get a stay away order. But yes, if the allegations are serious enough that the judge does find that it should be a stay away, then yes, they'll tell the other party they have to leave.
So let's say if somebody wants to retain you as an attorney, how can they reach you?
So you can reach me on my office line. It's 516-522-2718.
One more time.
516-522-2718. Can also be reached via email. My first name, Amina, AMINA, at rashadlaw.com. And I am on Facebook as well, Law Office of Amina Rashad.
Okay.
Okay.
So those are the places. And where are you located? Where are you based out of?
My office is in Uniondale.
In Uniondale.
Yeah.
Nice. So where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
10 years. So I want to have just like Muslim mega firm. And basically, I don't see myself as a sole attorney long term. I do want, I want to be with an immigration attorney and a criminal attorney and just have all different practice areas where we have a bunch of Muslims that got together and just kind of created a super firm.
So you just want to make one big network in-house with everybody working together?
Yes.
That's awesome. How long do you think that's going to take to build that?
I don't know however long it takes me to meet people that I want to be partners with. So I'm thinking 10 years.
So if you guys think that's interesting, reach out to Amina. You guys got her phone number. We're going to put in the Facebook page your phone number and contact info for everybody.
Perfect. Thank you.
To definitely get. So you guys have been listening to Shakil Co on American Islamic Radio. We had a wonderful interview with Amina. I learned a lot personally, so I hope you guys can benefit. Take care, guys. Next Wednesday, we'll be having Ihsan come on to Shakil and Company. I believe at 12:30 p.m. I will confirm with everybody, and he'll be here live on American Islamic Radio, and we're going to be talking about his life and what he's doing. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.